Young Mazino, an Emmy nominee for Beef, whose new project is the amazing The Last of Us, where he plays Jesse. Congratulations on this show. Obviously, when you were approached maybe to join for season two as Jesse,
Yeah.
what was your, I guess, what was your experience with the show previously, and then also the game? Like, where were you in your fandom or lack thereof? I guess coming into this.
Well, back when the first game came out, I couldn't afford a PS4 at the time, so I settled with watching all the cutscenes compiled on YouTube, thanks to whoever did that. Because I was a fan of watching good cinematics on from games, and I watched the first game like a movie, and then the live action comes out. Was blown away by that. And then when the second season was being cast, I had a meeting set up, thanks to my team and Mary Vernew at casting, and I met with Craig and Neil, and that's when the night before my meeting, I ran to a GameStop and bought a used PS4, and I did a attempted to do a speed run through the game, but it was so difficult. I had to lower the difficulty settings, and then just to get myself familiarized with the nature of the game, and then I had my meeting.
Did that help, like having even that experience of the game? I guess, and obviously it's a much different. The show's obviously inspired heavily is adapting the game, but I guess it's also its own thing, and obviously, so I guess for you, like, what did you gather in that brief experience from watching how Jesse was portrayed and just the character in general? Did that help, like, in terms of how you approach the character? I guess when you got to the show.
The common denominator I felt that was for Jesse was that he's a cool guy, and that's what a lot of people felt. But when I mentioned to Craig that I played the game, he was like, "I kind of wish you didn't do that." And I realized there's a lot of reasons for that, and it's to namely bring my own essence and bring my own energy and intention without trying to embellish or imitate or plagiarize what Stephen Chang did with his rendition of Jesse. Because also the writing's different, and playing the game did help familiarize myself with the world building. But then you get to set, and it's so practical, and the set itself is really there. Um, so you get tossed into into the reality of it regardless. It would be a different story if I was jumping into green screen and had to
Yeah.
imagine with my mind's eye. But the fact that they were able to create these brilliant sets on in studio or live locations, that really helped me, regardless of whether or not I would have played the game.
What do you think for you in terms of like the essence of Jesse and your character, your version of Jesse? Like, this take, like, what was for you? What was like foundational for you about him? I guess that you were like, I have to get this across.
Jesse, in my mind, feels like someone who has the responsibilities of a community thrust upon him, and he's taking that burden willingly, but it's not an easy thing to do. Ellie mentions in the first episode, she's like, "Hey, you're only like 4 years older than us," and Ellie's like 19. So Jesse's just stepping into his at his adult years as like a 24, 25 year old. I think he's had to augment his self into becoming something and being kind of groomed into becoming someone that's capable of leading this community and being the next Maria. But underneath that, he's not, I don't think he's necessarily built for that.
Hmm.
I think that's something he's had to learn to achieve, and part of that contributes to him being such a stickler for the rules and following things, doing things by the book, because that's oftentimes what you need to do to be able to get things done. Internally, like personally, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm a lot more impulsive and don't really listen, and I kind of like to do my own thing and a bit antisocial. So I think that combination of who I am and grounding myself with the framework of Jesse's attitude towards life and that as a character, it lends to this kind of interesting take where he's reliable and yet there's some aloofness
Hmm.
about him.
Yeah, I feel like you really get that. Like you said, like that stood out to me in that episode too, because they're so young and like he's such a, but he has to be such a leader, right? Like you're acting like you're 20 years older. You know what I mean? It's just like because of the situation, though, you have to be just thrust into this thing that you maybe wouldn't be at that age if the apocalypse hadn't happened or whatever. You know, that kind of thing. I just found that really interesting, and the way you play that is like really cool. Yeah.
That's why Dina's like Dina's heckling him when they're about to go on their patrol because they probably just smoked a joint and were partying like a few days ago, and then now he's all like back in rule mode. So she sees the veneer of being this responsible guy, but then at the same time, like when shit does hit the fan, he does have to access that fully and be that guy, which I think is cool.
So you mentioned obviously Dina and Isabella Merced is so great on the show as well. You guys are both coming into this as new characters, and obviously those characters have a relationship. So I guess how did you work with her in terms of like kind of getting that bond? I think one of the things I really love about the show, I think this is in the writing and both your performances. Like these are characters that are new characters, and I'm immediately like I was just like way in on their fates and everything about them, right? You know what I mean? Like you really kind of like bond with them as an audience member. So I guess for you guys, how did you bond and like create that relationship very quickly? It seems like to get the audience like to understand that these are key characters and relationships that we're going to be invested in.
Isabella Merced is such a star and so extroverted, and we are vastly different creatures, very opposite energies, and yet it works out so well because when I think a great connector for us is music, and there's a lot of times where I would get on the guitar, and she has such an incredible voice. There's a video of us somewhere circulating during our press tour. I think we were in Sydney and we're exhausted. It's like the 50th interview, and we're both I'm laying on the ground, she's laying on the chairs, and I'm like, I have a small guitar Gabriel Luna brought, and I'm playing something, and she just starts riffing off of it, singing Snow Allegra, and so good. It's hard to put that in words, but when you're jamming with someone and you're able to just find the groove together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's effortless, you don't need to rehearse or practice. You just drop into it. I think that's what chemistry is. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that can be incubated or worked on or created. It just is. It is or it isn't.
Those characters have obviously, like you said, like a great relationship with Ellie, right? And like so, you guys working with, I feel like Bella, it just feels again similarly like the chemistry is great. And I totally buy that you and Bella have been friends for years, even though again you're just coming into the show. I guess like what did you learn from them in terms of like obviously they were there for the first season, like so like how is that like how did you guys like kind of connect and find that relationship it's just really interesting, right? Because they're like friends but then like maybe competing for Dina, I guess, in certain ways, right? Like so like how'd you kind of like talk about that, I guess?
Bella Ramsey, prior to meeting them in person, my only impression of them was Game of Thrones, and then the
Mm-hmm.
first. So in my mind's eye, Bella Ramsey was this very prickly, anger-driven, just ball of fire. But that's the acting, and Bella Ramsey in real life is such a sweetheart and so genteel and generous and introspective and deep and thoughtful. And on top of that, leading a show, showing up the most days out of everyone. It's incredibly, I have a lot of admiration. Our first meeting was meeting up on the dock and getting on a seaplane, which is like a plane meant for like 10 people.
Okay.
And we're just flying over Vancouver, and there was so much turbulence. And I glance over at Bella during a really shaky moment, and we just start laughing. And that was like the energy, the moment. I think that was what we needed to
That's really cool.
the silver lining there.
Yeah, that's really cool. The practicality of the sets, and I mean, like this show is awesome. Like you could tell, like your guys are. It just feels very tactile, and obviously, like in these great sets. And so in the last, so we're what this week is the sixth episode. So fifth episode, we have the scene where Jesse obviously comes in and saves kind of Ellie and Dina from that room of very aggressive clickers or whatever. And I just thought that whole sequence is awesome, and it looks so crazy to watch. So I guess for you, what was the experience like shooting that sequence? Would you have all these stunt people and like obviously like there it's probably a lot of preparation I imagine, but like what was that like for you to get to be in that kind of like heavy action scene basically?
I never really imagine doing like a lot of action stuff, and I always believe in not doing action for the sake of action, but because it's necessary for the story. But man, that was fun to do. I love all the elements of the stunts and the actors and and the choreography and the movement and the lighting. And I mean, that was such a fun thing to shoot. And I've done a couple of action sequences before, and it's that adrenaline because you need to get it right because there's so many moving pieces. So cool, so epic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Was that one? Did you have to like? Was there a lot of rehearsal with that one, or how did that like kind of like did you kind of get it right away?
I played sports throughout my life, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
parallels, and um, I was also in orchestra for a long time, so there's a lot of parallels there. You know, it's a massive movement that's all cohesive and collaborative. So I kind of thrive in those environments.
Yeah.
I love being a part of that.
In terms of the finale, like what are you excited for people to see? I guess.
There is an actor you see in episode 4 who comes back, but his character development that you see off screen is night and day.
Hmm.
That's all I will say about that. When you see it, you'll know. I was working on that scene with that actor, and he was mentioning how he came back, and I didn't know what he did, and then later I see episode 4. I'm like, oh my God, you're completely different now, which is really cool. And then there's a performance between Bella Ramsey and Kaylin Dever that is absolutely phenomenal in the last episode.
Getting to like work on a show at this scale and stuff. Like, what do you kind of take away from it that maybe you'll bring to your next gig or whatever?
I think for me it's just a matter of every time I get onto set, like really bringing my best work and being as prepared as possible. And one thing I struggle with is sleeping. I I think there's just so much anticipation that builds up the night before because they send out the call sheets at like 1 in the morning, and then I'm like, okay, we got this going on, and then I have to try to just sleep and conk out, which is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly fine tuning with every project how to um, get to that optimal place so that I'm fully present and authentic and truthful in the moment. I also have so much gratitude towards getting to work on things like this. I mean,
Yeah.
after I worked on this NYU student short, um, that was like I was like eating pizza on a curbside, kind of very sparse and chill, and then going to a set like The Last of Us, where there's a literal town that's built. I've learned to find the joy in both of those things.